Welcome. Today we're doing the Tour de Zwift, Route 1, Iconic Stages. We'll start with some warm-up, and we'll join with, 2 or 3 minutes left.
Assalamu alaikum. Yesterday I posted a tweet showcasing how I take notes on YouTube videos in Logseek, and it kind of blew up. So because of the popular demand, now I'm showcasing how I achieve this in Logseek. First, let's take a look at how it works and what are some of the features that I like about this workflow, and then we'll talk about how I've implemented and how you can implement it too. So let's open the Logseek app and let's start with this note. And these are my notes on the Introduction to Quantum Circuits lecture by Qiskit. And as you can see that I've embedded the YouTube video here, and all of the notes from this YouTube video are shown here below that video. And you can see that all of these notes are timestamped as well. For example, if I want to learn about, exactly what she said about polywygate at 8:31, I can simply click on this timestamp, and it would start this video at that location at that time, instead of opening a new browser tab or browser window, which is really nice. I really like this. Another thing is that now if I want to take some notes, for example, about here polygate or polywygate, what she's saying, now here I can type, but now I can't see the YouTube video. So what I can do instead is that if I click on this here, right click on this dot and say open in sidebar, then these notes will also open in sidebar. So now if I go to the polywygate and wait a minute, on the Blocksphere, yeah, this part, yep. So if I write something here, for example, if I want to take some notes, this is where I can take notes while watching the video. So that is very helpful. Another thing what I like to do is that instead of having all of this extra information,
This is a video I'll use for my newsletter on research and knowledge management. I usually watch YouTube videos while I ride.
Now if I can, for example, move to 9:28, but she said at 9:28, and then carry on taking notes only having this video here. Now let's see how I've implemented this. If I go to the templates, you can see that I've defined a simple template for YouTube videos here, and it will contain all the metadata, for example, different tags that I can specify for that video. What is the status? Is it processed, or do I have to process it? Who was the presenter? Link to the video, etc. And after that, I have defined a section where I will place the YouTube embeds. And after that, there's a section for notes where I can take notes. So how I can use this is if I go to today's note, I can simply type template and then insert YouTube. And then let's go to the YouTube, and here, for example, here, this is the video. I'll simply copy this URL, and here I'll paste it or embed it here. There's a plugin, for example, embed, and there's embed YouTube video, and then I'll simply paste the URL here. So you can see that now that video will be embedded here. And for metadata, I can, for example, here add whatever I want. Who was the presenter? What was the link to the video? What is the original title? When was it published? For example, it was published on October 5, 2021. I can paste that here. When I process that, so I can say today. Yeah. So now let me close this from the sidebar. And now I can simply, for example, here I can open these notes in the sidebar. And here I'll simply just click on this dot here. It will open this video in this panel. And I can quickly go through this. For example, here he's talking about, let's say, something polygates. Let's suppose he's talking about polygates. What I can do is that at that time, by pressing Control plus Shift plus Y, it would insert a timestamp to that same time, that is 11:54, and then I can take notes here. And then, for example, after a little while, he talks about something else, then I can take notes here as well, and we can move on. And for example, now Control Shift Y, the shortcut key is Control Shift Y, and I can keep going. So that's the basic gist of how it works or how I take notes. So now if I want to again go back to 11:54, I'll just simply click this 11:54. Now you can see that it was back to 11:54. Another thing that Logseq it has ported is that here, for example, if I press Escape TW, now it goes into the wide mode. So here now the width of the YouTube video is increased, which would be beneficial in some cases. And if I, for example, here, that would be also responsive as well. Another thing that one needs to keep in mind is that by default, for example, if I go to settings, edit custom CSS, I've added a small custom CSS, for example, iframe. If ID starts with YouTube player, then its height should be 600 pixels. That's just what I prefer or what I've fixed here. So if I take that out, by default, the YouTube video doesn't look very good. For example, here you can see that its height is not very manageable or preferable, you can say. So it's not very good. So what I've done is that if I go to settings, then edit custom CSS, and then if I put that CSS style back here, I can say 600 or 700, whatever. So now the height of that YouTube video frame would be this. Now I don't have to do this every time. So this is just once. If I specify this height once, then it would work every time. So if I go back now, its height is 700, and yeah. So you can specify whatever height you want this way. So that is really good. Another thing that I really like about this is that when I publish these notes, for example, here, this is my site where I've published these notes. So here, log.admeter.com. This all works there as well. For example, these are the notes and these are the timelines. So if I press this timestamp 649, it would open that here as well. So it won't open another video, etc. So it also works great for sharing those public notes as well. Now, another thing that we need to keep in mind is if and how we can export these notes. So for example, if I go here and right click on this dot and copy as, and then copy this as text and copy to clipboard. And if I paste that into VS Code, then you can see that here it is using the Logseq specific syntax, YouTube, timestamp 15, and overview, and all of that here. So this won't work in Obsidian or any other Markdown related app because it's not standard Markdown. So there are a couple of options of how we can deal with that. One being that we can use regular expressions to find and replace or simply remove this. And the other is, for example, we can write a simple program in Python, JavaScript, whatever, that would be able to parse this as well. So in case of Markdown, for example, if I copy that and paste that here you can see that this is a simple regular expression which would capture this, for example, YouTube timestamp 15, and then I can use this to replace that here. Now this would be the link, and this would replace that with a standard YouTube video link or timestamped link, and then this would be a standard Markdown. This would work in any of the Markdown application, for example, in Obsidian or Bear or whatever. Before, I was using this method, that is manually using regex to replace the links to the standard Markdown. For example, in VS Code, I can simply type Control-S to bring up the find and replace command. Let me quickly remove that. So here in find, I can copy this regular expression here, paste that. Also, be sure to use the regular expression button as well. So once I've enabled that, I can paste the regular expression here. It would highlight these, meaning that it would replace these, and I would simply replace that with this expression. So now this is the regular Markdown. This would work anywhere, and I can copy that anywhere as well. But since I wanted to publish a video showcasing how this can be done, I wanted a better way to, or a more streamlined way to process these notes. So I wrote a simple JavaScript file, program or script, you can say, that would process these notes automatically. And I've also added that in Obsidian. So when I, for example, let me create a new note. This is an empty note. If I want to, let me copy that, copy as text, copy to clipboard. Now, if I want to paste that here, by pressing Control P and going into the command prompt, there's an option here, for example, Logseq process timestamps. Now, it would ask, should I remove timestamps or not? If I say that remove timestamps, that is yes, remove timestamps. And when I paste that, so it would remove all of those Logseq specific timestamp features. So it would only paste that those nodes with all of these latest equations and links and all that.
There we go, 4 minutes to the race. So not as much warm-up as I wanted, but that's how the morning happened. I usually like to try and get 10K of warm-up first.
And no, I don't want to remove timestamps. So I'll Now I have to give it a YouTube video link as well. This is because we don't have any information about the link here. As you can see, we don't have any information about what is the YouTube link, so we have to manually paste that here. So if I take that here, or
the plan is not to race this necessarily. Probably warm up for the first 10K still, and then we'll see about picking it up a bit. So this is a 38K event, and I guess it's officially my third race on Zwift Power, since I think community events like this are measured there.
It works, for example, it is exportable, but it's not very good as compared to Logseq, where, for example, clicking on a timestamp would start the video, embedded video there. So that kind of functionality isn't in Obsidian as of yet, but we can, for example, have best of both worlds, take Arc9 type nodes in Logseq, and then we can export those to Obsidian later on if we want. So that's one way. Now, how to add the script, that is this JavaScript script, into Obsidian, or how we can use that in Obsidian. So for that, there's a community plugin called Quick Add. Here you can, for example, search for here in browse and Quick Add. This is the plugin. You can install that and enable that. So in the Quick Add setting, first we have to, for example, go to manage macros. I've already defined Logseq process, but for the time being, I'll delete that and define that again. So now I want to say Logseq process, and I want to add this macro. For example, here I'm adding macro. Another thing before that, you have to, for example, this is the JavaScript script. Okay, you have to place that here. For example, let me quickly remove this. I have a folder defined here, resources, scripts. I place all of these scripts here. You can't see that here because Obsidian doesn't show JavaScript files, but if I open that here,
yeah, usually on these I warm up for a while, and then I try to settle in and choose, you know, I want to be in the top 500 or something.
so I place that here in this
So,
word as
but I usually don't do that until the race has settled down a bit, till I've settled down a bit.
And when we configure that, there's an option. For example, here user scripts, I can add a user script. So here by clicking on this, it gives me these options, which script we want to add. So I want to add process Logseq timestamps. I've added that, and now I can close that. So this would define a macro manager. And now here I'll remove the Logseq process timestamps as well. I've already defined it here, but I will define it again for you guys. So now we can, for example, here I will say Logseq process timestamps, and this will be a macro. Okay, add choice. And now by doing this, or by clicking this flashlight button, this would enable it. For example, we can select it from the command palette as well, the Obsidian command palette, which we invoke by pressing Ctrl P. So define this. So and it does text to them. It just simply places that Obsidian or Markdown, standard Markdown syntax as well.
Hey, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Daniela, and in this video, I'm going to show you how I make notes during my online lectures at medical school. Okay, so this has been a little bit of trial and error for me, and I feel like I finally found something that is working. So I started medical school back in September, and it was really hard at the beginning because I had to learn how to learn, if that makes sense. I hadn't studied properly in about 3 years because I was working full time, so it was like a huge learning curve for me. I initially started taking handwritten notes because that's what I used to do during my undergrad, and I would basically just like copy out things that were on lecture slides, highlight things, write things in colourful pens, try and make it look pretty. I don't know, just that's what I was used to. And then maybe like 2 weeks into the course, I realised I was just drowning in work, and it was taking me way too long to get through a single lecture. We had maybe 15 to 20 lectures that we had to do per week, and each lecture would maybe take me a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. So yeah, it was just not possible for me to keep doing that. And so one day I was just chatting to some of my friends, and we were just talking about how like difficult we were finding everything. And one of the guys said, hey, let me show you how I've been taking notes. I've been using Notion. I was in awe. I'm not gonna lie, it was just so beautiful. Everything was just so organized and clean and easy to find. And so that same day, I came home and started making all of my lecture notes on Notion. So thank you, Anthony, if you're watching this, for sharing your wisdom with me. And let me now actually get into the video and show you what I do. So I've actually spoken about Notion quite a few times before. I'm a huge fan. I use it to like organize my whole life, and I'll link some videos below so you can check those out. In one of my videos, I talk about how my Notion page is set up. So this is what home looks like for me as soon as I open the app. And as you can see, there's a link here which says medicine, which is basically the page which holds all of my lectures, all of my notes, everything I've done so far. So when I click into it, I get into this page, and essentially it's broken down into blocks and then into weeks. So our course is split into 5 blocks. We have just finished the second block, and each block is split into 5 weeks, and every week they release new lectures and new stuff that we need to do. So I have basically set it up per block per week. to make things easy to look up and access if I need to. So I'll start just at the top. These are different themes that the course covers. So this one, for example, is clinical anatomy and imaging. This one is cell and tissue biomedicine. And if I click into them, I can see everything that we have gone through so far for that theme. So these are all of the different lectures that I've basically been through. But I'll get into that in a bit more detail. So scrolling down, you can see block 1. This is basically everything I did for the first 5 to 6 weeks. And the very first week, week 0, was like our welcome week, freshers week. And that was the week where I was handwriting notes for everything, so there's really not that much there. I then go into block 1, week 1. And the way I've set it up is using this table. So Notion has a great range of tools that you can use to organize literally anything that you want. So you can create tables, graphs, timelines. It's endless what you can make. And I've decided to keep it in this sort of table format so that I can basically see everything that I've done, and I can add a bunch of different like settings to it. So in this very first column, it's basically all of the lectures that I went through for that first week. So my second column is theme, and here you can basically add a tag. So you can tag it with whatever you want, and you can change the color and then just personalize it however you want to. So my third column is Anki, and essentially this column is just a checklist for me to know whether I've made Anki flashcards for that lecture yet or not. And yeah, I still haven't made a few, so this is helpful to know what I've done, what I haven't done. The next 3 columns are review dates. So these are the dates where I first did the lecture. So this was back in September. The second review was the day that I second kind of like went over the full lecture again. And third review, clearly I have not done that. But the idea is that I can see how long I'm leaving between each lecture. And if I'm finding something pretty difficult, it would probably be beneficial for me to go over them more often. So essentially that's what this table does. So if I click on this lecture and then click on open as page, all of my notes appear. So the way that I have organized it is I have basically found the learning objectives for that lecture and made them into these toggles. And this is one of Notion's best features, I think. You can basically click into this toggle so you can show or reveal things and hide them whenever you want. The way I'm using it is to put the learning objectives on there and then answer each learning objective with notes from the lecture. So for example, for this one, gastric motility and secretion, these were the learning objectives. And if I click into each one, I answer that learning objective. So it will be really useful as well if I want to like test myself. So if I want to know...
Climb right out of the gates. Wish I'd warmed up more. I should really be able to push like 3.4 watts or something. But not today. Save that for Volcano. And it makes it just super easy for me to relate back to what I was thinking or what I learned or something that I found interesting from that lecture. Something else that I really like, you can see these highlights here, these are comments. So if I want to write something and then make a note of something that I thought, I basically just select a word or words and I hit comment, and then here I can write something I was thinking. And it will save that. So as you can see here on the right hand side, you can see a bunch of the comments that I made for you know, whatever things we're talking about in the lecture. You can add them, delete them, you can do whatever you want. So super, super helpful. So yeah, I basically just continue that for every single learning objective, and it has been super, super helpful. I then use these notes to make Anki flashcards, which is a video for another day. So yeah, that's basically this page. If I go back, I can choose to view that table as an entire page, so I can see everything that I've done so far. And then if I go back into medicine, into the main page, you can see that you have like a preview of that table there. And if I scroll down, you can basically see that I've done this for every single week, every single lecture that I've done. Scrolling down, I get to clinical skills, and these are basically notes that I've made on lectures or seminars that we've had in person. And I'm viewing this as a list simply because I didn't really like how it looked in, you know, the table view. I didn't necessarily need the first, second, third review. So that's something else that's really cool, that you can change the way that you view it. So this table, for example, if I wanted to view it as a list, I could view it as a list as well, and you can still keep all of your tags and all of the different filters that you've set for that table. And you can see that's what I've done here with this drugs list as well. So for each block, we're given a set of drugs that we need to know. So this is a pretty cool way for me to know the type of drug and, you know, some examples of those drugs. You can see here. And again, I can change the way that I view it if I want to. So yeah, that's what that looks like. For the second block, we had more drugs to learn. So I decided to put them all in this board view, which is pretty cool, I think. And I can like add different tags to it so I know what kind of drug it is. And you can see along the top, I have all of the different types of drug as well. So it will make it pretty easy for me to find something if I need to. So let me give you another example of, you know, one of my pages. Let's say this one, the heart and mediastinum. So again, I've got all of my notes. Most of these are just screenshots of images from the lecture that I literally can just drag and drop into the Notion page. So everything is referring back to that lecture. And as I scroll down, you can basically see I'm adding comments, I'm highlighting things, I'm changing the color of things. So something else that I wanted to mention that I absolutely love about Notion is the fact that I can find something so quickly. So when I was taking handwritten notes, sometimes I would, you know, just scribble something down on a random piece of paper that I'd find, and then I would lose that paper and that note was like gone forever. And so it would really frustrate me if I
I couldn't remember something, or if I didn't know where to find something. So one of the really, really cool features that Notion has is that if I click Command and F, I can search for anything at all. So let's say, for example, I wanted to find something on the liver. Notion will show me everything that has liver in it. So this one, for example, if I click into this page, it will show me everything that I did for liver physiology. And again, here you can see that I've split it into the different learning objectives. You can see how it's organized, how easy it is. All of these are screenshots that I've taken from the lecture itself, and it's just so easy to find things, so easy to view. And even within a page, if I wanted to find something, I would press again Command F, and you know, if I'm looking for albumin, it will show me everywhere albumin is. So just so easy to find things. Okay, so now I'll go back to just the very first bit that I mentioned, these themes. This basically has every single one of those pages as like a list. So if I was looking again, let's say for liver, it will show me all of the lectures that I've
Now we're just gonna ride it easy. Hopefully I can pass a bunch on the volcano.
If I click on that, you have a contents list, which is convenient, like the lists and features on Notion. But yeah, I hope that you found this helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
When it comes to the soles of your cycling shoes, is stiffer better? I mean, manufacturers tell us yes, some scientific studies tell us yes, and it's probably something I've said in the past. But is there a measurable difference that can be easily tested? And I mean, does it actually matter unless you plan on racing the Tour de France? Let's find out. Our feet are pretty impressive. They contain 28 different bones and an array of tendons and muscles. But as impressive as our feet are, it's pretty much still a given that we have to wear shoes when we're cycling. Now, something that you might have noticed when you're looking at cycling shoes is that many of them have a stiffness index or rating written on them. This is to do with how stiff the cycling sole is. But what you need to consider is that there isn't an industry standard or unit of measurement for this. Therefore, a shoe rated a 7 across different brands isn't necessarily going to mean the same thing. But generally speaking, the higher the number, the stiffer the cycling shoe. There we go. I've got 3 different shoes here in front of myself and Ollie, and each of them has a completely different type of sole. At this end of the scale, we've got a trainer with its foam and rubber sole, and this represents the most flexible of the shoes available to us today. And it's the type of shoe we might see a very casual rider, or maybe someone that's incredibly new to the sport of cycling using. And then here, as our sort of mid-ground, middle-range option, is a Dmt Wkr1. Yes, it's a winter shoe, but its sole is rigid and made of a nylon composite construction. Even though it's rigid, it still has a certain degree of flex to it. Now, this represents a mid-range option, or say a shoe that isn't exactly going to break the bank. And then finally, we have the Dmt Kr0. Now, this has a super stiff, super lightweight carbon fiber sole, which is incredibly rigid and has no amount of flex to it whatsoever. This is comparable to all of the top spec shoes that are out there. Now, the reason I'm using the Dmt shoes as our example today is because they're partners of the channel and help make videos like this possible. But all of the principles that we're discussing will apply to all of the different manufacturers out there. And this selection, I feel, represents the widest range of shoe flexibility that's out there, from the most flexible up to, you know, some of the most stiff out there. The test I'm going to conduct is 3 maximal 5-second sprints for each of the 3 different shoe types. I'm going to use the same gear, the same setup, and keep as many of the variables consistent so that we can get consistent results. Although when I use my trainer, I am going to use a flat pedal. I mean, come on, you can't expect me to use trainers and clipless pedals. That's just not even a thing. If you're thinking I could have got a slightly better flat pedal to use for this experiment, well, just don't judge me. These are a set that I stole off of Suggestion Boys Pub Bike, but, you know, they'll do the job. So the theory behind using a stiffer cycling shoe is to have a more efficient power transfer when you're driving the cranks down. And it means that less or none of your effort is wasted through the sole of the shoe flexing around the pedal. And it should, in theory, make you a little bit faster. Right, test 1, I've got my trainers on. 3, 2, 1, I'm gonna count myself in, and then I'm gonna do my sprints. Do you reckon anyone's ever had flat pedals on an F12 before? Right, let's do it. I know these are power meter pedals, but for this experiment, I'm recording the power using the kicker so that we've got a consistent measuring device. Right, on to the next test. Test 2, the nylon shoe, our mid-range offering. Yes, this is a winter shoe, and yes, I am riding the indoor trainer. Don't judge me, it's all in the name of science. Right, let's get set up, ready for this next test. Test 3, our final test, and this is the carbon fiber soled cycling shoe. The stiffest shoe on test. Let's get sorted.
That carbon shoe looks exactly like my specialized one.
I know some of you might be
I know it's not
quite second
specialized,
away.
but that's what it looks like.
It's a very fair test. They're not using the same pedals, but come on, I'm using flat pedals with the trainer and the clipless pedals with the specific cycling shoes because that's how you would normally do. You wouldn't use a trainer with a clipless pedal. It just wouldn't happen. So we're keeping it a fair test using the pedals that would be associated to those shoes. So let's run through the results. So first up, we have the trainer with the flat pedals. So out of our 3 sprints, we had 970.
Let's try and catch in with this group now for a while.
991 with an average of 988 watts across those 3 sprints. Moving on to the nylon-soled shoe next, so nylon composite, this one is. We had 1,157 watts, 1,120, and then finally 1,127. So some fairly consistent sprint efforts there. And that gives us an average of 1,135 watts, which has a maximum power average of 147 watts more than the flexible trainer. Moving on to the carbon fiber soled cycling shoe next, the stiffest that we had here. Sprint 1, 1,216 watts. Then we had 1,159, and then finally 1,202, with an average maximum power of 1,192 watts, which is 57 watts more than the nylon composite shoe. So maybe, in this instance, cycling shoe stiffness, or the stiffness of the sole, isn't necessarily quite as important as you maybe first thought. But what if you don't really care about the stiffness of your cycling shoes? Well, thankfully, there's lots of other performance characteristics of your shoes that you can take into consideration when you're looking to choose a new set to buy. Things such as the breathability of the upper, the overall weight of the shoe, how secure the enclosure system holds your foot in place, and I guess, crucially, the level of comfort that that shoe offers you over a prolonged period of time. I mean, those characteristics go on and on. There's lots of different things to consider. But maybe when I'm looking to choose what cycling shoe I use next, I might not consider the shoe sole stiffness as one of the most important characteristics. Oh, the great thing about all of this is that there are many mid-spec or mid-priced shoes which share a lot of the same features as what you find in a top-spec shoe. The main difference is that you have a slightly heavier shoe, but crucially, it's at that slightly lower price point. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a big thumbs up. And I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on the stiffness of cycling shoes, so let me know in the comments section down below whether that's something you take into consideration when choosing your shoes or not. And, well, if you did like this video, share it far and wide with all of your friends, and remember to subscribe to GCN Tech, because it really helps support the channel, and click that bell icon to turn your notifications on. See you later.
I love the iPad. I use it for a ton of things, and I think that the way that the iPad is set up by default is great for most people. I think most people who buy an iPad will be totally happy with most of the default settings, but you and I are not normal people. We are nerds who like to tweak things, configure things how we want. We like to make changes. We love a good setting screen, right? And so I wanted to take you through my favorite settings to change on the iPad to make it a better experience for me, and I think you will find things that work for you as well. I'm also going to try to make sure to show you some of the more niche things you may not have noticed before, so hopefully one of the things, at least on this list, will be something you didn't even know you could change and will make your life better today. Now, a little bit of meta news. You'll notice that my lighting's not particularly good today. My background is very much not aesthetic, but that's because I'm in the process of moving. If everything goes well, should be moving in a couple weeks here, and after that I will be back on my normal routine, posting to the channel once or twice a week, and I hope you guys will stick with me through that. But yeah, it's going to be really, really great for the channel. It's going to let me mix things up quite a bit more. I'm going to have more space to work with in this little office that I have here, which is basically just this angle, but that's more than enough for now. Let's jump into the tips. So we have to start in the settings app, and that's going to be right here. You want to go to sounds first. This is where I find a couple things that are really helpful. So I hate when my iPad makes notification sounds. I really hate it. So make sure ringers and alerts is turned all the way down. This is not your media volume. This is a separate volume. So make sure this is all the way down, and turn change with buttons off. If this is on, then sometimes you're going to change the volume on your device, and you're actually going to change the ringer and alerts volume. I don't want that. Just turn that off. Also, if you scroll all the way to the bottom here, we have fixed position volume controls. So this is on by default unless you have an iPad mini. So if you have one of the new iPad minis, this is off. And this is that thing where, depending on how your iPad is oriented, the volume buttons are going to change which one is volume up and which one is volume down. So if I'm rotated like this, we'll have this button for volume up, this one for down. And if we're over here in landscape, it's going to be this one for up and this one for down. So it's slightly different. It may be confusing to you if you're used to the old way, but if you have like an iPad mini and an iPad Pro and you switch between them and it's confusing to you, this is a nice option to change there. Next up, we have to go to the...
My buddy Matt here noticed that before anyone else. So he made it on a big site called iMore.
Make sure this is contacts only.
But the volume buttons.
That's how you get into trouble with like seeing your neighbors on there and stuff, and like you just have it contacts only. That's the safer thing to do. So that's the first thing. And then iPad storage. So if you have an iPad that's full of stuff, iPad storage is your friend. It's going to show you what apps are using up the most data on your device. So if I see, let's say, Divinity 2. This is using up a lot of space. Maybe I don't have room for it. I do on this one, but let's say I'm on a 64GB device. I can just offload the app, or I can delete it right here. I'm going to save all of this space. So that's a really nice thing. If you're out of space, come here. Also, the last thing I go here is the keyboard settings. There's a whole bunch of stuff here, but what I want to go to is hardware keyboard. Hardware keyboard lets you change things on the Magic Keyboard or other Bluetooth keyboards that you have connected. I like to turn off auto capitalization and auto correction. I'm using a real keyboard, so I don't really need those assists. I do like the shortcut for 2 spaces after a period, or after a sentence, 2 spaces gives you a period. You can change the keyboard brightness and modifier keys. This is a really great one. I hate the caps lock key. I never use it. I've never wanted to be caps lock, but I do miss the escape key from my full-size keyboards that the Magic Keyboard doesn't have. So what I have is the caps lock key mapped to escape. You can tap on any of these and change the mapping to any of your modifier keys on the keyboard. Now we're going to go over to Control Center.
Welcome if you're watching. Tour of Watopia Stage 1.
If I go up here and bring up my Control Center,
sitting in a group.
Here, right? But these aren't the default set. I can change
Plan to go hard on the volcano.
I can add
Which I think is the end.
Here that I can add if I
But I don't know.
And based on my needs, I can just put whatever ones on the list of controls. I can move them around, so this will sort the order. So this will make screen recording the first one. If I go up here now, screen recording is the first one at the list of additional control center options. So I can add whatever ones I want. This is really great to customize the iPad experience to your needs. Going down to the next one, we got display and brightness. Try True Tone. You're not going to see it in this video, but True Tone is on by default on iPads, and I think it's great. But you can turn it off and see kind of what the iPad would look like if it wasn't adjusting for your light in the room that you're in right now. I find it a little jarring, actually, to be like, whoa, it's actually adjusting it really nicely for me. So I like having True Tone on, but you may like having it off. And then Auto Lock. I think it's at 5 minutes by default or 2 minutes by default when you open up a new iPad or when you use a new iPad. I like to have it set to never. Sometimes I'm uploading large files, I'm doing more computery things on my iPad, and when the iPad screen turns off, a lot of things just stop functioning. And so I like to have it set to never. If you're using the Magic Keyboard, you can close it to lock the screen, or you can always hit the power button to turn it off. But I like to have it just never auto lock because it interrupts my tasks more often than I'd like. The next section is home screen and dock, and the only thing I would change here is show suggested and recent apps in the dock. I like to turn this off. I turned it off on my Mac settings as well. I don't like seeing those recent apps there. I just like having just the dock that I want. I can get to the apps through the app library or something else, but yeah, I like to turn this off to make my dock a little smaller. A couple things with the Apple Pencil. We've got some settings here. You can turn off the double tap gesture. So if you have issues where you accidentally double tap and you're like switching from your current tool to the eraser, or like you're doing these like switches that you don't want to do, you can just turn it off. That's fine. A lot of apps will have ways to switch anyway for you, but yeah, you can turn that off if it's an issue for you. The other thing that can be kind of annoying is scribble. I love the feature. I think it works pretty darn well, but I like to just have the keyboard pull up most of the time while I'm using my iPad outside the Magic Keyboard. So I actually turned this off because I don't want to scribble into things like the URL field. I just want the keyboard to come up, so I turned that off. Going down a little bit more, we have the battery. The one thing I would do here is just turn your battery percentage on. Now, the privacy page has one setting that's really, really useful. Obviously, you can go in and change all of your privacy settings here, but the one I want to call out is tracking. So you may have gotten pop-up notifications from apps that say, hey, this app would like to track you across the web, across apps or whatever, and you just say no to those all the time probably, but wouldn't it be nice to not even be prompted for those in the first place and just auto-reject all of them? So if you turn off allow apps to request to track, it will never show one of those pop-ups. So I haven't seen any of those pop-ups in months because I turned this off, and it's wonderful. You forget that it's even a thing that you need to think about, and that's because you don't have to think about it. They just don't show up at all. In the App Store, I actually turn off automatic downloads for apps and app updates. So app updates, I just like to see when apps have updates and do a manual install, and I install like 20 apps at a time. That's just me. You probably want to have that on. That's probably what most people want. But automatic downloads for apps, this is if you download an app for the first time on your iPhone, it's automatically going to download on your iPad as well. And I personally don't want the same apps on these two devices, so I have that turned off. So I have to manually install apps from the iPad if I want them on my iPad. I don't have it automatically syncing back and forth. Scroll down a little bit more, we have passwords, and that's going to authenticate, and I'm going to blur out most of this page, but the thing we're looking at is autofill passwords. So if I go in here, you can see all apps that allow to be your password manager, and iCloud Keychain will be checked by default, and you can turn on any other apps that offer this functionality. I have 1Password, Chrome, and Firefox installed, all that offer this functionality, and you can check as many of them as you want, or I guess you can check 2 of them if you want. There we go. Almost screwed that up a little bit. But you can have iCloud Keychain turned on with one of these. I actually find it to be a little annoying to have them fighting over which one is which, and like I accidentally autofill the iCloud Keychain one, which is out of date, and the iPad or the 1Password one is newer and I want to actually use. So I just turn off iCloud Keychain, only 1Password shows up, and it's a really seamless experience. This is a nice thing if you're using a third-party password manager. Scrolling down a little bit more, and we just have 2 sections left. If you go to Safari, you can change your search engine, so it's Google by default, but you can select any of these as well. I currently have it set to DuckDuckGo, but you can select whichever one you'd like, and that's just how you set that. Additionally, a thing that really confused me at first is downloads. So you have a downloads folder both in iCloud Drive and locally on your iPad. So I like things to download to my iPad, and then I can upload iCloud Drive on demand. I think it defaults to iCloud Drive, though, which means if you download like a 4 GB file in Safari, it's going to upload that to your iCloud account. It's going to download it to all your other devices. You probably don't want that. You probably want to control like those large downloads better. So I like to have it download directly to my iPad, but you can switch it back and forth, whichever you prefer, or any other folder, directory, whatever on your device, you can do it there. And the final setting for those Apple News users out there, there's actually a setting in here to restrict stories in the Today view to only sources that you follow. So if you see like all this junk in there that you don't want to see, you can turn this on. And now when you go to the Today view in Apple News, it's only going to show you things you've chosen to follow. It's more like an RSS reader there, but it makes it more likely you're going to see things that you actually are interested in, that you like. And yeah, that's just a nice little thing to make Apple News a little bit more useful, especially around the Apple One plan and you have Apple News Plus and you don't really use it, and maybe one of your issues is stuff that shows up there is stuff you don't actually want to see. This is a nice little trick there. So yeah, those are some settings changes you can make to the iPad to make the experience a little bit better. I showed you what I prefer, but you can obviously select whatever you think is best for you. But yeah, if you like the video, hit the like button. If you loved it, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you here next time. Bye-bye.
Visual Studio Code is one of the most popular editors right now for programmers. Whether you're a beginner or an advanced coder, it's a great addition to your tool suite. You can run it on Mac, you can run it on Windows, you can run it on Linux. So here, in Reese, they're
Volume's bad on that one. You can only hear it on one ear, so watch that one later.
This is the city of Lafayette, Louisiana. It's a pretty typical mid-sized American city. Like most American cities, it has that one nice old building that didn't get bulldozed in the 60s. And like most American cities, it's broke. It's full of aging infrastructure in desperate need of repair and not enough money to maintain it. But unlike most American cities, Lafayette acknowledged this fact and requested the help of Strong Towns and Urban 3, a consulting company that helps cities better understand the economic impact of development. Their analysis in Lafayette uncovered a harsh reality that should be a wake-up call to every municipality in North America, as well as any city emulating the American car-centric style of development. But let's back up a bit. In a previous video in this series, we discussed how two identical lots in the same city have very different property tax revenue. In this example, a 100-year-old commercial block built in the traditional style of development drastically outperformed a shiny new development created in the modern car-centric style. But despite the differences in revenue, both blocks have the same cost to the city to maintain their infrastructure. So by bulldozing an old block of shops to build this car-centric second-rate taco joint, the city was destroying its wealth. This example alone should be enough to convince anyone that the modern car-centric suburban style of development is broken, but it's worth exploring this further. Does this hold up in other cities? And what happens when we bring into account the cost of servicing these properties with roads, water pipes, sewers, etc.? And that brings us back to Lafayette. This is a map of the revenue and expenses data uncovered by Urban3. So what are we looking at? Well, any successful business tracks its ROI, its return on investment. When making a decision between two competing projects, it's critical to know which one will result in the most revenue compared to the investment put into it. And too many projects with a negative return on investment could bankrupt a company. But in order to know your ROI, you need to know two things: your revenue and your expenses. Urban3 created a kind of municipal return on investment for Lafayette. This map shows the municipal revenue per acre. So why per acre other than the fact that Americans can't use metric? Well, every property in a city needs services, and the majority of services get more expensive the more spread out they are. Roads are the obvious example. The farther a parcel of land is from everything else, the more asphalt is needed to get there. The worst case scenario are cul-de-sac, which are basically just city-subsidized driveways. This also applies to water infrastructure, sewers, and all other physical infrastructure, as well as the cost of policing, fire department coverage, and even the cost of providing education. But while per area revenue is actually quite a good approximation, Urban3 wanted to fully understand these expenses, so they painstakingly calculated the cost of services for each parcel of land in Lafayette. It looks something like this. This shows every area that's a net positive for the city in gray, and every area that's a net negative in red. And here it is in 3D. This analysis has some fascinating results. The first is that downtown is wildly profitable. This is a bit surprising because there's nothing particularly remarkable about downtown Lafayette. It's certainly not bad, but you'd never know from looking at these pictures that this is the economic engine of the city, while places like this are a drain on city finances. But this shouldn't be too surprising when you think about it, because there's an insane amount of asphalt and infrastructure here for a very small number of shops. And for some bizarre reason, the Google Street View car drove down every aisle of this parking lot. But since they did it over multiple years, you can move down this way and watch the Toys R Us go out of business. Most of these profitable gray areas are the historical neighborhoods built along the river. But one of the biggest spikes is this place.
Let's see about keeping it with this group.
A neighborhood called River Ranch. Places like this are a net positive for the city. One of the most shocking discoveries that Strongtowns discovered is that the replacement cost of all of the infrastructure in Lafayette, something that you would expect to happen over about one generation, was about $32 billion. And that's just infrastructure, not all the other everyday costs needed to run the city. Yet the existing tax base was much smaller than that. In order to bridge the difference, Strongtowns calculated that the average family in Lafayette would see their tax bill go from about $1,500 per year to $9,200 per year. But the median household income in Lafayette was only $41,000 at the time. There's simply no way that can happen. But those simple averages are hiding the bigger picture of who's subsidizing who, because these gray sections are the poorer areas, while these red areas are significantly wealthier. So here's a fun quiz. Which of these two neighborhoods is subsidizing the other? Number one or number two? Yeah, it's the first one that's subsidizing the second. The poorest people in Lafayette are consistently subsidizing wealthy suburbanites. But I don't want to pick on Lafayette here. As I said at the beginning, there's nothing particularly unique about Lafayette, and these results are typical for most American cities. Well, I guess in Lafayette, the suburban sprawl is built on former wetlands, which results in unusually high costs for stormwater management, but otherwise, it's pretty typical. So let's look at another city that's not literally built on a swamp, Eugene, Oregon. Here's the Urban3 map of taxable value per acre. Once again, downtown is clearly visible. And here's the 3D map of revenue compared to expenses. It's still obvious where downtown is, but you might be wondering about this little bump over here. This is Crescent Village, a modern mixed-use development, because once again, these kinds of mixed-use walkable neighborhoods financially outperform car-dependent suburbia every single time. By the way, here's what that 3D map of Eugene looks like from below. The red spikes correspond almost perfectly to modern car-centric suburban developments. A visual reminder that car-dependent suburbia is being subsidized by...
I have to show my kids the dinosaurs, especially my middle one who wants to be a paleontologist.
In Eugene, Urban3 analyzed 9 categories of development: residential, mixed-use, and commercial in low, medium, and high density. And here's what the average revenue for the city looked like after taking into account the servicing of these properties. In the case of Eugene, the low-density suburban housing is being subsidized by everything else. People may look at this and say, but I want to live in a low-density single-family home, and that's fine, but only if you're also willing to pay for it. But there's a bigger problem. This is what the land use map looks like for Eugene, Oregon. The majority of land is zoned exclusively for single-family residential, which means that the majority of properties in the city are a net negative to city finances. And this is a pretty typical result for an American city. When you see results like this, is there any surprise that American cities are broke? Here's the tax revenue per acre for South Bend, Indiana. See if you can spot downtown. Or here in Charleston, South Carolina. Or in St. Paul, Minnesota. And here's the entire state of New Hampshire, with all of the traditional downtown neighborhoods clearly visible. In every case, in every region Urban3 has analyzed, traditional, mixed-use, walkable neighborhoods dramatically outperform car-centric suburbia. But in North America, we've made it difficult, or even impossible, to build new neighborhoods this way because of modern zoning and other car-centric regulations. Of course, these mathematics apply outside of America as well. Here's a map of Auckland, New Zealand. You can clearly see the increased city revenue along transit lines. And you need to zoom out significantly to see downtown because it is so financially productive. So what do we do with this information? Well, our cities, through their policies, can decide what kind of developments they encourage. The city of Guelph in Ontario, Canada, not far from my hometown, is an excellent example. In 2013, Guelph needed more room, and like all Canadian cities, they were considering expanding their borders and sprawling. But after running this kind of ROI analysis, they decided to focus on infill developments by making it cheaper and easier for developers to create buildings that encourage walkable neighborhoods, like this one. Here's what the revenue per hectare because Canada looked like for Guelph in 2013. Not bad. In general, Canadian cities are better with their finances than American cities. But here it is in 2016, and in 2019. This is what a financially solvent city looks like. So which path will the financially struggling American cities choose for their future? They can decide to make it easy to build mixed-use walkable neighborhoods, making good use of land and encouraging walking, cycling, and public transit. Or they can build more of this garbage and go bankrupt. Seems like a pretty easy decision to me. I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon who pay me to mathematically annihilate the suburbs in 3D. If you like this kind of content, check out Strong Towns and Urban 3. And if you really like this kind of video, visit patreon.com/notjustbikes.
In my opinion, one of the greatest things about being in the Apple ecosystem is AirDrop. If I have this image and I want to get it over to my iPhone, I can just go to AirDrop, I can select my phone, and I can accept it, and I'm done. If I was signed into the same iCloud account, I wouldn't have even had to confirm it, it would just send it for me. And it works with big files too. This file is 839 megabytes. If I go ahead and share via AirDrop, and there we go, select the iPhone, this is going to transfer in just a couple seconds. So being able to transfer these files between your devices, I'm just showing Mac to iPhone, but it works iPhone to iPad, iPad to Mac. Like any direction you want to go, it all works great. And for my money is the best way to transfer basically anything.
Trying to sit in this group here a bit.
Now, if you have an Android
Still want to get out there on my own.
Things get more complicated. So let me show you a solution to this problem that's actually pretty darn solid. So if you go to snapdrop.net, you can just load it in any browser, any operating system you want, doesn't matter. I have it open here on my Mac, and now it says open Snapdrop on other devices to send files. So any other device on my same Wi-Fi network, I'll go to an Android phone here, load it up, and you can see these two devices can see each other now. So if I want to send that image, I'll just drag it onto this button here, and it's going to transfer. It's not as fast as AirDrop, but it is totally getting the work done. So there it is, it's finishing up, and I can save it to my device. This is a duplicate, but there we go. I was able to save it to my Android phone. If I want to go the other direction as well, I can tap it from here, I can go ahead, and we'll send the same file back. So we're transferring this over to the Mac, and we'll see a pop-up here in a second on the Mac, where I have the file, I can ignore it, or I can save it. I can even uncheck this to just automatically download it from this device in the future. So I'll say save, I want to allow downloads, and there you go. So now it's in my downloads folder. And that's really great. It all just works kind of like AirDrop. Now, a couple caveats. One thing, here's that large file, 839 megabytes. This is going to be maybe too much for Snapdrop to handle. It will technically do it, and you can see the progress bar has started, and it's going to go around, and it will transfer the file eventually, but it's so much slower that you may as well not even do it in most cases. It's very, very slow compared to AirDrop. I don't know if that's a bottleneck in my Wi-Fi network, if this is something I could address, but it's definitely much slower than the AirDrop that I just did between my Apple devices. But again, in a pinch, could definitely work. Also, I did mention they have to be on the same Wi-Fi network, so you can't do this randomly with someone on the street. You have to do it ideally in your own home, or in a workplace, or some situation where you're both on the same Wi-Fi network for them to be able to see each other. But yeah, it's pretty darn great, and it's a really great workaround in a pinch, because I've had really annoying workflows to transfer these things, just files in between my non-Apple devices, and this is going to really help me with that. So I wanted to show that off today really quick. Thank you so much for watching.
Hello, hello, everybody. I am here today with the great Chris Lally, over on that side, I guess, on the screen. And we're going to talk iPad and Mac. What?
I was just being narcissistic.
How you doing, man?
One of the things that I've been looking at recently has been how I might look at building a top-down system inside of some kind of productivity tool. I have been wondering if there's a way to do this in Obsidian or using another tool, but in my research, I stumbled across this awesome vault that Christian Bagger-Bach, forgive me if I totally butchered your name, but he's constructed using a number of plugins inside of Obsidian. I want to take a look at that today, just to see how this is put together, and to show you some of the power of what you can do inside of Obsidian. All right, so here on the screen, I've got Christian's website. How do I manage projects and goals in Obsidian? This is a really unique idea because it leverages the Data View plugin, which allows it to pull in different segments of information from different parts of your vault using the queries involved. So you can see that he's got this dashboard where you can pull in goals and projects. We'll take a look at this in the vault in just a second. What's really cool, though, is that it's a very minimal plugin vault. There's a few different ones that help. The minimal theme is what enables the card view that you see in the screenshots up here. But then there's also the contextual typography, which is necessary for the usage of Minimal, Data View plugin, the Kanban plugin, and then 2 plugins that Christian has offered. The Quick Add plugin, which automates the creation of the goals and projects. It's like a macro plugin, which is pretty neat. And then Meta Edit, which edits the metadata or YAML front matter in the note to reflect the status of a Kanban board. Now, these 2 plugins have a little bit more power and use than what's covered in this vault, but I thought it was an interesting primer on how it works. But basically, if you want to get involved, and we'll have a link to this in the description, you can download this demo vault to see how it's all put together. Let's head on over to the vault, and we can take a look at that. Okay, so this is Christian's demo vault. We'll open up the side pane over here so you can see. It's pretty simple. There's a goals folder, projects folder, templates, views, and then 3 notes: dashboard, goals, and project board. The dashboard is really just a couple of data view queries. But with the minimal theme, you can set these CSS classes here, cards, cards11, and table wide, to show the data view results that are in a table format in this card setup, which is really, really handy. If we just go in here, you can see what this data view block looks like. It's just a simple table query, which creates the link to the file as the title. It pulls in the progress bar for the goals from goal, so it's just pulling from the tag goal, where progress does not equal target. So that's basically saying where the progress value in the goal note is not equal to the target, so anything that's not complete. And then sorting by descending on type. So this is really cool how it pulls this in dynamically. Something interesting that you can do if you wanted to create a goal is all you have to do is hit Control-Command-P in his demo vault, and it's got these quick add actions pinned to the command menu, the command palette. So you can hit add goal or add project. I'm going to hit add a project, and it automatically walks you through these prompts, which is really, really fun. So I'm going to add a project and say I want to learn Ruby on Rails. This is relating to my goal of test goal, subtitle, because I like discourse, and discourse uses Ruby on Rails. It created that project already over here. You can see it says Learn Ruby on Rails. And the other cool thing is that if we go into our project board, it's automatically added to the Kanban board, Learn Ruby on Rails, and it's associated with the goal that we set. This is really fascinating because the automations that he's created here using the Quick Add plugin allows for much more easy, streamlined creation of these goals, of these projects in here. Otherwise, you would have to click and create a note, manually fill out the template, manually add it to the project board, manually connect it to the goal. And instead, he's just using simple data view queries and some JavaScript built into the vault here to create this. So if we go into, we'll start back up in goals. You can see the setup here. It's got just a couple of different Kanban channels. So we'll go with the test goal that I created. So we have a YAML front matter that's got tags, the alias, so that the name of the note can be different from the actual title, which is good because the title differentiates it in the vault. You might have goals at some point or projects at some point that have similar names. You don't want to deal with that. The type, and we'll get into this. This dynamically updates. We'll get into that in a minute. Progress and the target, the reason, because it's a good idea to track the reasons that you have a goal, and then the time span in which you think you want to complete that. This is where it gets interesting here because in this data view snippet area, you can set essentially parameters. So you can automatically query these and try to find those. So the bar uses a view progress bar and then uses the file test goal. And then under projects, it's looking at projects and then links, and then it pulls them in automatically. So you can see under here, created projects is automatically associated with this data view query. If I hop back over to the project board, you can look at the project that we just created, which is to learn Ruby on Rails. You can see it was created in the to-do category. If I pop in here, you can see tags, projects, alias is learn Ruby on Rails, status is to-do, and then our goal is test goal, so it's automatically associated up there. You can create these templates in whatever way you want. I'll show you those templates in just a second, but what's really fascinating is on this project board, if I move this over to in progress, a couple of things happen. If I wait a second, because it takes a second sometimes to do so, and pop back into here, you can see that the status has been updated automatically to in progress, and that's the Meta Edit plugin. We'll dive into the settings in just a second here, but I wanted to show you this, because if we go back to the
Give it a little burst, see if I can catch those Tron bikes up ahead.
But now, Ruby on Rails is under our active projects, because it's looking in this data view query for notes under project where the status equals in progress. It's a really fascinating way to pull in almost database-like features into Obsidian without building a real database. Let's take a look at the 2 plugins that are included in this vault that Christian has created. First and foremost, Quick Add. You can see we have add goal and add project. If you want to actually change or look at these macros, you want to look at the manage macros button here, not the settings here. Those are a little, the user interface isn't 100% clear, but I'll show you it in just a second. But under manage macros, say we want to look at the add project macro. We'll hit configure. And then there's 3 steps to it. Create project note, wait for 200 milliseconds, and then capture it to the project board. Looking under the settings for create project note, you can see that we're pulling an automatic template from the project item template in the templates directory. The file name format is set here. You can pull in values. So if you set value in the note with this syntax, then it will prompt you when you create the note using the Quick Add plugin for these values. You can set a folder of where you want to store the note. This one's in the projects, and then under Capture to Project board, you can set the file name of what you want to set it to. I've also done some testing with this. You can use a variable in here like value area. Say if you're working on a specific area, but you don't want to have it all under one board, you can type in that area and say effective remote work or YouTube or work, and then it'll automatically add it to your work project board if it matches this file name. You want to add it as a task if you're adding it to a board, and then you can add it under a heading, which I think is fascinating too. If you're going to add a quick add goal or a quick add macro, to do that, you just type in the name here, test, what, and go down to macro, and then you add choice. But if you actually want to associate it with a macro, you have to hit configure, and then which macro you want to use, and then click this command button, the lightning bolt. That's pretty cool. Under meta edit, this is really neat too, because there's a setting for Kanban board helper. If we click on the gear, you can see how it's set up. So you can type in the Kanban board that you want, and it'll automatically pull in the possible values from the columns on that board. Then in notes that are linked to that board, you can have them automatically update the status. So like we did under the project board, if you move it from the to-do category to the in progress column, then it will automatically update the status attribute in the YAML front matter to reflect the name of that. It's really handy to avoid a lot of manual work. One last thing to take a look at here are the templates. There are two in this vault, in this demo vault, one the goal template and the project template. In here you can see that there are these values in double curly braces. This is what the Quick Add plugin uses to prompt you for these values when you're automatically adding them through that plugin. So this one is the name of the goal, the target number of what you want to reach for the value of it, why that goal, and then if you want to have a drop down where you can choose from a number of options. It can be 10 years, 5 years in this instance, but you can just create this list. And then a project item template, you've got the same idea here. You've got an alias set up, the project subtitle, and then it just automatically plops these in the directories that you set up in the macro itself, whether it's goals for the goals, projects for projects. So what do you think about this? I think this is a really interesting approach to managing tasks and managing projects inside of Obsidian. However, is it worth the extra hassle versus using a tool like Notion or a dedicated task manager like Todoist? I'm up in the air on that yet. But for those of you who are interested in digging in and configuring and tweaking with Obsidian to your heart's content, this very well may be an option to make Obsidian a productivity tool of choice for you.
Alright, g'day guys, and welcome back tonight to another Obsidian video. Tonight we have a contentious topic to discuss, and that is custom calendars. A long-desired piece of functionality that people wanted in the Realmworks community for a long, long time, that unfortunately never became available, is currently available in Obsidian already. It's not available out of the box, it is a plugin, it's a fantastic plugin, and that is called Fantasy Calendar. It's been developed by Jeremy Valentine, whose name you may be familiar with already. He's the guy that's creating a lot of the RPG or the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons plugins for Obsidian. So anything from, you know, dice rollers to pinnable maps and fantasy calendars apparently. So thank you, Jeremy. Absolutely hats off to you, mate. This stuff is great. Let's jump over to Obsidian and have a look. Alright, so in front of me you can see my demo vault 2. You can see by default over here, like there's no options for a calendar, so we do need to turn that on. So the first thing we're going to do is come down here to the settings cog and click that. That's going to open up the settings, and we go to community plugins. Then we jump over here to the browse button. You do need to make sure that safe mode is off for this to work, but click browse and just start by typing fantasy. Fantasy calendar should come right up. You can see it's by Jeremy Valentine here. You can see it's been downloaded nearly 2,500 times. So let's click on that and have a bit of a look. We can see here there's a readme file that tells us all about the plugins. It shows us what it looks like. It goes through all the functionality, tells us how it works, and then it goes into more detailed descriptions about some of the more advanced things that you can do. You know, there's support for multiple calendars down here, for example. Not something that I've played with yet, but let's go ahead and install this plugin. So we click the install button. You can see it's doing its thing, and then once it's finished, the button's update and you can click enable. So let's do that. Let's close out of the window, go back to Obsidian and have a look and see what's changed. So we can see here, there's a new tab for Fantasy Calendar. It's defaulted to that, and it says there's no calendar created. Click here to create, well actually, sorry, create a calendar to see it here. Then also down here, there is the calendar. So I can click, you can enable it to put any calendar in Obsidian. Come over down there, edit button, I want to change, nice place to print the date. We have a deep. So now I want to really get a different. I'll just download here, leaflet, which he'll download and have a bit of fun with. I'm not locking anything behind the paywall, so you can just come along and keep your eyes on that for new content that's coming out. So anyway, if you are enjoying, I hope to see you around the traps. Be sure to share your screenshots of what you're doing in the Facebook group. We're all loving what you're doing, and if you learn anything, please do share it as well, so we can all obviously come on the same learning journey together. And with that, guys, have a great night, and I will speak to you on the forums. Enjoy.
Have you ever taken notes for school or university and realised you absolutely never look at them?
So what's the point of taking notes anyway? Today, we'll discuss a book called How to Take Smart Notes by some Kr0, which has the potential to change this for you. All this book does is reveals a system that Nicholas Luhmann used to produce 400 scholarly articles, as well as over 70 books in his 30-year career. And this was not superficial work. It was very deeply thought out, and it exposed very fresh connections. So if you want to level up your thinking and just increase the level of your ideas, or even just remember what you read, then this book will reveal the way to do just that. So very briefly, I want to discuss the structure of the book, how writing is thinking, the Zettelkasten technique, the different types of notes, and finally, my experience of using this system. So for the structure, the book is essentially broken into 3 parts. So part number 1 is everything you need to know. Part number 2 is the 4 key underlying principles, and part number 3 is 6 steps to successful writing. When I started to write and share content on the internet, I had this idea in my head that I needed to really just think about all these things, digest them in my head before putting them on paper, and somehow magically I would end up with a beautifully written prose that I could just send and put on the internet somewhere. Now, after reading this book, I find that idea completely ridiculous, because as you sit down to write, you will write a few mediocre sentences, followed by a few more mediocre sentences, and then you'll read over them, and you'll realize how mediocre those sentences are, and how you've just had a new idea, so you'll replace those sentences or add a new sentence that will just level up this idea or connect all of it together. So until I started writing things down, I didn't really think things through. They would just be little beginnings of an idea. So this is the key aspect of this book. Writing is thinking. So what you want to do is not highlighting or copying the book notes or any quotes that you find inspiring or interesting. You don't want to write the quote. Quote is fairly useless at this point because you already had your own insight. You want the essence of your own thinking habits, and the more you come up with your own thoughts and your own insights in response to stimuli, the better you will be at expressing your thoughts in general. And if you build up a system such as Nicholas Luhmann's Zettelkasten, you will also never face writer's block because you will always have a pool of ideas to take. This leads us nicely onto what Zettelkasten actually is. So Nicholas Luhmann used a system of little cards that he wrote ideas down on and filed them in a cabinet. The beauty of the system was that he linked all of those cards together, which by the end of his life totaled to over 90,000 cards. And this is the entire core idea of this note-taking system. He distilled his thoughts onto so many cards that at any one point, whenever he wanted to write something, he could just go to his Zettelkasten and just pick up a card, and that card would be linked to a few other cards. He could just read them, and through reading them and thinking about them, he would come up with even more new insights. You can also use this system in a digital form, which is what I tend to do. There are special apps for Zettelkasten, but I tend to use either Brain Research or Obsidian. I have created a video previously where I go into a brief overview of what I do in Brain Research. The key idea is that you just link your thoughts and notes together. And the reason this works is because of Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve. This curve shows us how quickly we forget information if we don't try to recall it. When we read new books or new articles, we only really remember the gist of the book a few weeks later, or whilst it's fresh in our minds, we may remember a few quotes. But if we don't try to retrieve it, it's just gone. And this was really frustrating to me. So what Luhmann did here is, if he wanted to write about an idea, he would pick up one of his old ideas, and he would no longer remember that idea, but looking at it again, he would have a fresh insight, so that he could then spin off on that idea and just do some other ideas. So essentially, he could continually come up with new ideas every single time he looked up his old insights, which he had forgotten. So the book goes over the different types of notes.
So we're catching that bigger blob up front. Just want to sit it until we do, I guess.
This is purely just for remembering your thoughts, or when you're out and about and you have a thought and you think, oh my god, this is great, and you write it down. Those can be your fleeting ideas or quick response to another stimuli, and it's really just a stepping stone towards literature notes and permanent notes later on. Speaking of literature notes, those are the book notes. So when you are reading something, an article or a book or anything at all, you are not jotting down the quotes, you are jotting down your response to the quote, your thoughts about it, and any ideas you may have. And then you just tag it with the book name, the reference, whatever you need in order to find it again as a random occurrence. So you need to be able to link to that note. And finally, we have the permanent note, which is when you look over all your fleeting notes and literature notes and you actually put them into a system. So like Brain Research, where I would actually go over all of my literature and fleeting notes and add tags and which books they were from and any categories I think they currently fit into. The premise of this note-taking system is that you don't need categories because your categories will kind of spring up on their own as you write more notes. So my experience of using this system. So I would jot down my current thought and just promise myself I'd get to it later. I also found that when I take literature notes, I am very tempted to quote directly or copy and paste bits of writing that I found particularly amazing. And this is a particularly difficult habit to overcome when you've been literally copying and pasting from a board. So it was quite difficult to just sit down and force myself to only write down my thoughts I had about the particular stimuli. However, after you do this a few times, it becomes more of a habit. You read with an intention, with a purpose, and you'll be looking for things that fill up your categories that you have. By categories, I mean things that speak to you, or things that you want to write about yourself. And the final point, looking at a long list of quotes is rather tedious. It almost feels like reading the book again. So instead, looking at a bullet-pointed set of thoughts that may be around about 10 short bullet points that each one is an insight, it's just incredibly more exciting because you get new insights and you can just add that little bullet point next to it and just tag it as a new note, and you're constantly spinning off on those ideas, and you get a lot more insight from 100 pages. As your approach emerges and you become more comfortable looking and using Zettelkasten, take a look at my other videos on Brain Research and how I've implemented it. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, Lance Armstrong documentary. Questionable cyclist. Mostly because he's an asshole in the midst of doping.
Do everything what we can in terms know where you can ride? Prepare your clothes and some tea and stuff. Okay. Okay? What if I keep going? You can't. Huh? You cannot. 3 meters of snow. Both sides? The guy says you can. There's no way you can ride. There's no way. Who's this guy?
Very simple, but later to make it happen was not so simple.
A physical and mental delivery here by Lance Armstrong. 5.5 hours he's been pedaling to date.
Like other teams, they didn't understand what exactly we were going to do when we said we were going to prepare for the Tour de France. But who is going to be our leader? I said, Lance Armstrong. But he cannot climb, they say.
But he's accelerated, he's out of the saddle, sprinting up this climb now.
If you keep going, you take the jersey, yeah? If you keep going, you take the jersey, yeah?
Lance Armstrong, as the clock ticks down, is racing to the yellow jersey of the Tour de France. It's certainly one of the biggest fairy tales this race has ever produced. A man that really was only given a 20% chance of living because of cancer is now turning to feel a part in the Tour de France. And it's a long time since we've seen a performance like this.
Basically, I like doing the job. I enjoy it. I enjoy the travel. I enjoy the sacrifice. But I really enjoy just constantly seeing if it's going to continue to work. I mean, to me, that's fascinating that we have this template and we can just continue to run it over and over and over again and train hard and make sacrifices and you know, just in the name of sport, just to try and win the biggest and the best bike race in the world year after year after year.
As many of you know, it's been a trying winter for me and my U.S. Postal Service cycling team. In November of last year, a formal investigation was launched into our team regarding the alleged use of performance-enhancing drugs. I'm very happy to report today that we have received confirmation that the results of the testing of our urine samples have proven to be negative. To be clear, we have learned that our urine samples did not contain EPO or any other banned substance as we knew they would not.
How is that? Because they totally did.
We're going to be proven innocent. But when we're proven innocent, we're proven that the only thing we've taken is a bunch of hard work. And I wish we would write that story as well. And I think that's only fair. I look forward to racing again this week in France, and over the next few months, I plan to do a few other races here. And of course, on July 7th, I plan on defending my Tour de France title in pursuit of number 3.
All right, guys. I have a second.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
With the team that we have here, every single one of us can win Circuit de la Sarthe. Every single one of us can win Circuit de la Sarthe.
Johan came in on the team in 1999, and he really brought in a lot of confidence. Lance never really thought he could win the Tour de France. He never truly believed he could win. And Johan came in and said, that's our objective. And he told the rest of us that we could support him in winning the Tour de France.
He's a guy that they can respect. He's a guy that they know has ridden the Tour de France. He's been a contender at the Tour de France. He's ridden for the big teams. He's ridden for well-drilled teams. They can look at him and say, if he says it's like this, then he's talking from absolute experience.
It's hard for, I suppose, Americans and Australians to imagine this is like, besides soccer, this is the sport to watch. At the start, you can come up and get our autograph, come talk to us, whatever. Not many big professional sports, the rock fans can get so close, and you have people that you probably never remember ever talking to pull out a photo of you with them 5 years ago.
This is probably the most family-oriented sport in the world. The people come around and they have a picnic all day, and they enjoy it, and they hear it, listen to it on the radio, they watch it on television, on portable televisions, and the race comes for them. And although they see it only maybe for 20 seconds in some cases, they love it.
So it's a 3-kilometer climb, and then we stay on small roads. We have another climb coming at 150, and then we go to the local circuit. Stefan or Lance, if you hear me, you have to help bring that brake back, eh? Only Christian, and there's 16 guys in the front. It's not enough. It's not good. There's too many good time trials in the front. Only Christian. Let's put two guys to pull in also with those guys. Right? Okay, guys, it's split in the front, so Christian is in the second start. Eh? There's 7 guys in the front and 9 guys in the back. And Christian is in the second. We have to go on there. Come on, eh?
seconds, that's what it says first, guys. 58 seconds. Nobody.
So usually it gets pretty ugly towards the end of the race, and I don't know. I think Johan, wasn't happy with the way it happened today, so I'm sure he'll want to be on the aggressive side, which is always fun.
I grew up, I was also a cyclist, and I grew up in the middle of cycling, because everybody was cycling where I live. So we know exactly what the needs are, and this is the drinks for today during the race. This is the rice cake or apple pies, and it's all homemade stuff. All the little things. There's so much little small things all together. It counts, so it makes a difference. The little thing makes a difference. Yeah. Good cake. Making sure that the laundry is good done. Make sure that they have a good drink. Make sure that everything is proper and nice. And also, you have to have a heart for the sport.
About yesterday, I think the team made the wrong decision to not immediately react. Once Stefan was dropped, 16 guys in the front, and even if Christian is the best of us for the moment, was not a good break. I know Lance was tired because of the plane, but we were 4 other guys. Today we have to go in the breaks, and we have to have always 2 guys in the breaks. So in the beginning I would say, let's go with the breaks, and if we see that nothing happens, attack ourselves. 27 seconds for Tyler, 27 seconds for Tyler. So we pay attention now to the counter-attack.
There's kind of like a certain rhythm to the race. Everybody attacks in the beginning, kind of gets settled in. Maybe a small group of riders goes away, and everybody else kind of settles down. And then it's an opportunity to figure out, is it going to get colder? Is it going to get warmer? Is it going to keep raining? You see a lot of guys going back to the car.
The radio's not working so hard.
Sometimes one guy from a team will go around and kind of collect clothing from certain guys, and then go back to the car and drop it all off, and then come back with some food. And then kind of it's also an opportunity to take a piss if you feel like you have to. Because later on in the race, you don't get to do that.
Tyler, you have 2 minutes on the peloton, and there's a guy, Sivatov from Big Mat. He's 38 seconds behind. It's better to wait. If you need something, I can give it to you now. I'm going back to the peloton, and Big Mat will stay here. If something happens, I'll go back to the bunch now. Guys, let's not stay in the back. Let's not stay in the back here,
What has happened is you become dependent on these radios, and all of a sudden you can't think for yourself. You're out there and just like brain dead.
Did he copy?
The radios suck today.
These radios suck.
You have a new one.
Huh?
You have a new one.
No, I have an old one.
Hey, I tell you have a new one.
Guarantee you have an old one. It's all beat up.
It's a brand new one you have.
No.
The radios are kind of hit and miss. We got some new ones.
This is not a new one.
Oh, this is not a new one.
Tyler.
Okay.
Try that one. Try it.
Okay, I come.
¿El pelotón no oyes nada? No tengo nada.
I do not understand you. In the beginning, everything looks a little bit hectic and problematic, and sometimes you don't see how you're going to solve a problem, but
it's mass chaos. That's why it's good that we do these kind of races before the tour, and and we get these things straightened out.
Call me on the radio if you need me.
Look back, and seriously, it was like 5 seconds later. And luckily, I got on that big guy's wheel. Yeah. Nice drive.
I think one thing that people ignore about Lance Armstrong is that his training is much more like a track and field athlete's training. He trains for specific goals.
Certain things we can always upgrade. Technically, I can look for speed in the wind tunnel and change my time trial lag. But we can take the climbing bike, which is what we did last year, take it down from 9 kilos down to 7 kilos. Those are evolution. But at the end of the day, what's the hardest thing is? The hardest thing is to just get back to the level that you were at before.
That sucked. How was the position? Good. That was a good thing. Was it a good thing at all? Yeah, this bike is really different.
If you've got a guy who's capable of winning the Tour de France, then you have to base your whole season around that. You have to have a team that is ready on day one for 22 days of battle.
Hard training today. Very, very hard training. I I need more condition. Yeah. But it's good for the tour.
Circuit de la Sarthe was, I think, a good race for a couple of reasons. It's really only preparation, getting the rhythm, trying something out in a time trial, but in a more relaxed way. Lance was not really focused. He came back from the States, the press conference, and that always reflects on the team. If the leader is not really doing the race to win, then the motivation is not the same.
Circuit de la Sarthe is a great race. You know, beautiful race. It's good countryside. It's good terrain, but it's only Circuit de la Sarthe, and we have much bigger fish to fry.
If you start the Tour de France in July and the team hasn't had any victories at all, everybody's pretty nervous. The sponsor's nervous, the director's nervous, the bike riders are nervous. But if you've had a good campaign in the races leading up to the Tour de France, then the team is just that little bit more relaxed. The sponsors feel as if they've got their dollar's worth of publicity out of the team. So therefore, you know, the pressure is not as great as it would be as if you were going in without any score at all.
I'll save a little bit for the sprint. 4.9k.
Pisic heeft 10 meter. Pisic nog altijd. Daar komt Wezenman. Wezenman is sterk. Maar ook Van Bon komt daar nog aanklampen. Van Bon komt daar naast Wezenman. Gaat Van Bon hier winnen of is het Hinkepie? Van Bon of Hinkepie? Het is Hinkepie.
George, congratulations. Nice victory. And you needed it. I don't know if I won yet. Yeah, you won. Are you sure? Yeah, we're sure.
Absoluut zeker, Karel.
How sure? 100%. Sure, you win. You win against Wevelgem 2001. It's sure. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Yeah, but it's the photo finish. They're looking at the photo. They're looking at the photo. You don't need it. You win. Hij wil het maar niet geloven. You really win, George. He says I won. He says he's sure, but you don't believe me. If it's true, then I'm very happy. But I want to make sure. Yeah, our commentators, they confirm it. You win. Really? Then, yeah, that's good. I very much been needing to win. You know, my directors and the managers. It's been a long time since I won, but they really believe in me. And every race they say, George, you can win, and they make me believe. And I know that I can win. I just have to have everything right. But I hope this just confirms that I have more victories to come. I hope. So now you're one of the favorites for Paris-Roubaix, you know? That's where one of my main things. Yes, of course I want to win for Roubaix. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I wish you good luck for Sunday.
Guys, let's have a toast on George. First, for George. It's the first victory in a classic of this team. I think in the history of US sports, it's the first victory in a classic. Although it's not a World Cup race. Let's say that Gambia is a big classic. So thanks, George. And let's toast on another one on Sunday by Roubaix.
So my title in the team is actually assistant sports director. So it means we have so many races, we have riders enough to do a double schedule. So it means Johan is almost all the time on the road with a part of the team for one Lance, and I'm almost always on the road with the rest of the team.
I'm the only guy who's on time ever. The races are, especially up here, are very stressful. Pretty much a war zone every race we do up here. So time we get to relax and try to take as much advantage of it as we can.
Gentlemen. If you have a strong team, that is because they are friends. That makes the small thing that you need to be really good, to have a real good team.
I think this team is the most international team in the whole peloton. So you have the guys from all over the world. The American riders, they don't do this sort of club inside the team. If it's Dutch team, all the Dutch riders they have their own club. And this team is just living like a family. They're sharing everything as a family. All victories, all losses, or whatever we do. I think it's just American mentality.
You like it or you hate it. You have to be crazy about this race. You have to be mentally sure that you can do it. But most of the riders, if they see this, they're done. If it rains, that'll be terrible.
The objective for a winner of Paris-Roubaix is to have the maximum riders of the team around you as far as possible.
When they come into a position of stress at a big event like the Tour de France or a big event like Paris-Roubaix, then you'll see what their weakness is. But so far they haven't been put into that position.
Hoping for a draft or something. Nope.
At the start of a race like Paris-Roubaix, there are 10 guys who can win. It's not a race where you need good luck. It's a race where you've got to make sure you don't have any bad luck.
3 kilometers to go. left, then we have a slight uphill, then it's becoming more narrow. So from now on, we stay there good in the front with George, everybody, yeah?
And these are very, very slippery indeed. And this over the first stretch of 24 sectors.
Looking down that long line there, somebody's gone straight down, and that looked like one of the riders from Domo.
So guys, George crashed. We have to chase, but we don't panic, eh? Don't panic.
It was like ice skating out there. After the third time I crashed, I just started laughing.
Sort of not cycling to every day, it's sort of just battle on wheels, man.
So George, it looked like I told you before, it's going to be a very hard one today, a very individual race. So you're in good position there. Just take once in a while your pull, not too hard, the whole day in reserve, and you will see it's going to be very hard today. But be confident, you are strong, man.
Come on, George. I think if it comes together, George will win the race.
It's very nervous in the peloton. Everybody's stressed. He doesn't get nervous when the peloton gets nervous. That's a part of the talent if you want to do good in this race.
Come on, guys, to the front there. We don't leave George alone there, eh?
We're back at the sharp end now, and George Hincapie of the USA is riding a brilliant race.
You see, when you do have the form, you ride over the cobblestones so easily. Hincapie is very relaxed here. He's picking his own line over these cobblestones.
George, you're fantastic. You're fantastic, eh?
Hincapie, I think, has gone down as well there. That was Hincapie just picking himself up. Wilfred Peters is riding by him right now.
Don't panic, don't panic. Refine your tempo, eh? Don't panic. Very good, George. Very good, very good.
At the moment, you see he's slipping all over the place.
He's all slipping all over the place, Paul. You're right, he's in big trouble, George is right now.
George, don't panic. Don't panic. You're okay.
And Hincapie cannot get himself rolling at all.
Go on, George. Go on, go on. We cannot do anything. We're behind. George, don't panic. Don't panic. You're okay. Don't panic. You're very good.
George is in all sorts of difficulty now trying to get his bike going again. I wonder if he's got a flat tyre.
Don't panic. You can handle this. You can handle this.
George has got a flat tyre, and there it is. This time he's taken the wheel out, and he's called up the service.
Well, there he was. It's very difficult. He was riding so well. No panic at all. He waited for the neutral service there to come up and give him a front wheel, and he's up and riding once again, but he will have lost his place in that very select group right now.
Come on, guys. Eki, Cedric, Benoit, Matthew, Tony. There is too many people in the front, eh? It's not possible that we have a guy, one of the favorites of the race, and you leave him alone there, eh? Come on, you have to go on and we have to come back.
Now they start to attack. George, he's going down.
This is the escape now, trying to chase down the leader.
George, look, listen. You are so strong. It's like there's two different races. You ride twice as fast as the other guys. So be conservative, wait your moment, you'll be able to do whatever you want in the final.
Coming right up into third position is another Domo Farm Freaks rider, that's Cervez Kr0. They've ridden off the front right now. I would have expected George to attack on the next section of cobblestones, but now he's in a very bad situation because he's got two men from the same team, the team of the leader Wilfred Peters, and they will not work with him at all.
He's speaking with him now.
50 k's to go. 50 k's to go. He's perfect now. Yeah.
What? Yeah. Puncture, George, puncture.
Hey! Shout for the Watopia!
Lance. That's not going to work.
Hincapie is the first man to catch the lone leader, and now that just might give the little pause which requires the little slowing in the speed, and that will give Johan Museeuw a chance to come back, and that will make 6 men at the front, 4 of them belonging to one team, Domo Farm Freaks.
Oh, now cool down. That was hard.
And they will attack
Let's use my power ups.
consistently all the way to the finish line.
George, if you have something left, we have nothing to lose anymore, eh? It's going to be a man against man here, eh?
They're trying to snap the accordion here. They're trying to get a Domo Farm Freaks rider off the front to get the victory, but Hincapie is going to try and challenge all of these moves.
Come on, you're the best here. You're the best here.
In professional cycling, when you have one guy against 4, you lose. 100%. No way to win.
They're going to keep attacking all of the time, and somebody is going to catch out George Hincapie. This again looks like Cervez Kr0 leaping off the front right now, and this is what the guys from Domo Farm Freaks are trying to do. They're trying to isolate the rider off the front. They're trying to keep George Hincapie in the back.
Our team lost the race in the first part until the first couple section, so there's not so much we can say about that. There has been crashes, there has been punctures. That's not really an excuse because everybody had punctures and crashes.
It's George Hincapie on the left of our picture here. It's going to be close. goes by Dmt. It's a 1-2-3 because Vainstains gets it for Domo. Hincapie is 4.
We had a bad day as a team in general, but the team was super strong in Flanders, and again, the guys that we have are class riders, so I'm not worried about who we have. Maybe we'll get 1 or 2 more guys.
He goes with Johan's car. Stefan, you go with Johan's car. First one.
Funny thing is that, like, after the race, it's like this big circus going on behind me.
You put my rain back in the truck for Camembert?
And everybody gets back, showers, back the cars. Okay, who's going where? Okay, this bag goes here, this bag goes there. Okay, you get in this car goes, you know, to Belgium, this car goes to the airport. Yeah.
See you in Amsterdam.
Okay, or Dunkirk.
Over the years, I've become a lot more comfortable here in Europe. And yeah, I miss home, but it's not like the early days when I was just counting the days to go home. Now it's I really enjoy living over here, and it's a lot different than the United States, but it's a nice different.
Watch the movie? Hello, man. Oh, hello, man. Stefan's trying to turn albino.
No, not albino. I just want to prove that I'm a pure Norwegian blonde Viking.
It's your life, you know. You have to like it more than anything.
So, executed fairly well. I did, I don't know, it passed like 80 people going up Volcano. Was I sitting around 6:12? And then I kind of held my position reasonably well in the low 500s. Had a good sprint at the end. Not my highest wattage, but decent anyways. And now, I think I'll probably finish this video cool down. Gonna keep it real easy. And then have breakfast and stuff. My wife goes off to work. Oh, would she leave? About half an hour. So I'm gonna watch a little too.
Now this is my dream. I live in my dream.
You have to be a little crazy about the whole thing. You have to love it. If you're a couple of weeks or a couple of months out of it, you missed it already.
Naturellement, de la part des organisateurs, du public français, des journalistes européens, il y avait un phénomène de curiosité pour cette équipe américaine qui a fait des bonnes performances dans le Tour de France, mais je crois qu'avec US Postal, une marche supplémentaire est arrivée parce que l'équipe US Postal s'est un petit peu européanisée en prenant un directeur sportif européen et plusieurs coureurs européens qui possèdent la vraie culture du Tour de France, du cyclisme européen. Et je crois que cet apport de la culture du cyclisme européen, de Johan Brunel en particulier, a été déterminant pour faire progresser l'équipe américaine US Postal. Et ça n'est pas une surprise pour moi de constater qu'une équipe américaine telle que US Postal aujourd'hui est comparable à une grande équipe européenne dans son comportement, mais avec un champion d'exception qui est Lance Armstrong, elle est parvenue au succès 2 années consécutivement. Le Tour de France, vous savez, c'est presque 100 ans d'expérience. Les coureurs européens, les équipes européennes ont les acquis fondamentaux de cette expérience. Et c'est quelque chose qui manquait un peu aux équipes américaines. Aujourd'hui, les choses sont à jour.
You couldn't ask me to be any more motivated for this race. I love the country, I love the region, I love the race. It's a special event.
We have a great team here with Lance and Christian and Cedric and Ekimov and Chechu. We have a really super squad, and I think we can do a really good job tomorrow.
When Lance sets a goal to win something, all the competitors should watch out. So he's given us the word, amps the goal. So we're going to be there to back him up, see if he can win it.
I think we have never had such a strong team like we are having here. But it's very important that a race like this, especially when it's raining, first of all, that we do it like as a team race, that we don't have individuals, that we ride as much as possible in the front. Benoit, you stay from the start with George, and Cedric from the start with Lance. We know that we have guys that can win the race, so I want the 100% effort from the whole team. So guys, we see the peloton is already in different groups. It's going to be the whole day very important that we ride in the front, because it will happen any time. Everybody in the front.
Amstel Gold is a very nervous race from the beginning until the end, because they always hit small villages with a lot of people on the road.
is exciting about this. Like, there's a lot of corners and roundabouts in it. And because of the wind and the rain, they are riding in, echelons, and that makes it very dangerous. They have to pay attention. So it's a nervous race. That's a good situation for us now. We have George and Chechu in the front here in the group with more than 3 minutes on the bunch. So George and Chechu, 7 minutes. 7 minutes on the bunch. 7 minutos. 7 minutes. Hey, this is serious, eh? So perfect, guys. Perfecto, eh? Muy bien. Venga, venga.
It's good for a guy like Lance to have riders of the caliber of George and Eki alongside him, because tactically in a race, if George Hincapie gets into a breakaway, that takes the pressure completely off Lance, because it forces all the other teams to chase.
So Lance and Cedric and Christian, this is what's left from the peloton. We have 3 guys here, and George and Chechu up front, so we are in a perfect situation. Eh? Christian and Cedric, make sure that we always keep Lance as good as possible in front. And Lance, you have to wait and gamble. Eh?
Lance Armstrong on the attack now with Eddie Mazzolini.
But it's quite strange the way he's going off the front right now, Phil, because I don't think he actually wanted to attack. He was in a leading group of riders, and it was as if they almost just let him ride off the front.
So for the moment, it looks good. The guy who was with Lance, he also worked together with him, so that's also a good sign.
This is the chaser now coming along, and I would say that's around about 15 seconds just now.
Decker is coming back to you and Mazzolini now. He's like 50 meters behind you.
3 riders in the front group now. Decker has joined Lance Armstrong and Eddie Mazzolini, so that's going to be good for this Armstrong group, because behind, Rabobank won't chase.
Armstrong really is riding like a man possessed. No obvious tactic other than to get out and give himself a real hard workout, and he's hurt Mazzolini.
The thing that always amazes me, Phil, about Lance Armstrong is he picks his points in the season. He comes out to test himself to make sure he's on course for the Tour de France.
Lance Armstrong putting on a fine show here, showing us, I think, Paul, that we are indeed seeing a man preparing for the Tour de France.
2 kilometers to the bottom of the Kouwberg. How are you? Think you can drop him on the Kouwberg, or is he strong?
Superbly deciding by the American Lance Armstrong, and he's been called and joined by Eric Decker.
Lance, play it cool, eh? Play it cool, eh? Remember, they need a victory in Amstel Gold Race a lot more than we do. That's a big advantage for us. Lance, Decker is getting nervous, and De Roy also, eh? They're really very nervous.
Now, this is Johan Brunel here, the young manager of the US Postal Service's team that Lance has a lot of respect for. A few words of wisdom. Unfortunately, I can't hear what he's saying.
It would be interesting to know what he's going to tell him right now.
Lance, you have 40 seconds on Mazzolini and 1 minute and 10 seconds. 1 minute and 10 seconds on the group of Museo, but for the final, the last kilometer, stay in his wheel, eh? Don't come out of his wheel. Remember 99, eh? You can beat him like that.
Now, this is going to be a most intriguing final kilometre now.
Let's not forget that just behind us we've got Serge Baguet, who is absolutely boring down on these guys. And the last check we had, in fact, was at 20 seconds, and here he is now.
He's under the kilometre to go. It's going to be quite dramatic. And the other 2 are going slower and slower.
This is almost a track sprint, a max sprint against these 2 on the front. Decker looking over his shoulder. He's keeping up to the far side. Decker starts the sprint from first position. Armstrong's coming.
Well, Decker's been forced to lead out now. This is a perfect occasion for Lance Armstrong. Armstrong, I think, although he's watching around the back, he would have come by now. He's not going to get down, Eric Decker. And Lance Armstrong, second again, but quite honestly, should be happy with that, because his form is coming.
Hello? Yeah. Yeah. George and Chechu were in there. It was a big group, it was a good group with Schmil, with Petito, with George, so that nobody had to work in the peloton, and then when the group was caught, there was only 37 guys left at the end, with 5 guys from us. And then Lance attacked and it was finished. Yeah, he's in good shape. The team was very good. I mean, we had a good team also. Here was Eki, George, Chechu, Victor Hugo, Cedric, Christian, Benoit, Lance. 8 good guys, eh? Of course. No, we rode the perfect race. It's not just Rabobank was stronger, that's all.
Close. Yes.
Oh man, the next month is crazy. A lot of travel, fly all around, look at courses, train hard. The good news is my family finally arrives next week. See them on Wednesday for the first time in seems like 2 months. so that'll make things easier. But now we do our regular boot camps.
It's the end of the first racing period of Lance, but it's also like the start of the real Tour de France preparation. And the fact that he's in such a good shape to start these training camps is a very, very positive thing to know.
In the race, how far is this?
A lot of athletes in old school, like myself, when we raced to reach fitness. Lance and his team train for specific goals. And I think that's the difference. And I think maybe one or two of the older fashioned teams have maybe not quite figured that out yet.
I think these will be this. Go back to Dresden.
We're in Dresden.
Yeah.
Where's that?
Here.
Oh, yeah?
Then this yellow road. That's the biggest.
It's a small one. That's the big one.
Ça veut dire aussi qu'ils se sont compris pour travailler toute la première partie de l'année pour le Tour de France. Et ce qui m'impressionne beaucoup, c'est que ces deux hommes, au mois de mai, au mois de juin, effectuent la reconnaissance presque complète du Tour de France. Ils reconnaissent les cols, les difficultés, avec beaucoup de professionnalisme. Ce sont les seuls qui font ça parmi les grands champions. Et c'est une des clés de la réussite de Lance Armstrong, c'est cette appréciation commune, partagée, de la manière d'aborder le Tour de France.
You see the Fort Alamo back there?
The what?
Fort Alamo.
Yeah.
Western Village, it said.
This year is going to be a very tough year for us. It's the third year in a row we try to win the Tour de France, so that's something very difficult.
And I know that getting back to those levels, getting back to the speeds that I've ridden the last two tours, if I can do that, then I'll be close. I'll be in the race. I'll be competitive.
When you have a teammate who can win the whole race, you want to join that. It's cycling is a team sport, and I feel like I'm a part of his victory.
My biggest value to this team is supporting Lance in the Tour de France. It's the biggest race in the world, and if you can win the Tour de France, you can beat the back in every other race all year long, and your season's still going to be a success.
He knows that he will need all those guys in the month of July more than 100%. I mean, they cannot save 1% for themselves.
It goes beyond just making a 100% effort on your bicycle, making a 100% physical effort, because we go a lot deeper than that, and I think that shows when we're working for them.
I've said this many times before, I don't need to be out here for money, I don't need to be out here for fame, because these things I don't really care about. But I do care about working hard and fulfilling the plan and the dream of being a competitive athlete, being a professional athlete. I mean, at the end of the day, it's me versus the other guys.
Jeez, the irony just drips off this. You know, everyone this time was doping. So I fault him less for that. Fault him more for the assholeness of the whole thing, where it really seemed like it was all about the fame.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, there's no snow right there.
These are ironic videos.
It's avalanche. Yeah. Well, I think I want to ride a little more, you know? Why don't you do another 10 kilometers of uphill? I'll go down 10K and come back. Pay attention, man. 10K. That's what it takes to win the tour. What? Training in this weather. Nobody sees that. Hey, you know what? When the super's good, all is good. Hello? Hello?
I mean, the guy trained hard. He had the killer instinct to really win.
So the expectations were high. So,
but
would I recommend this for your M1, your Pro,
I don't know.
Max, or the iPad Pro, or even a Windows device? Well, I bet
I
you
actually
have some
loved
other questions,
Lance,
and I
as
wanna
many
address
people
those.
did.
And the only way I could test this
I
so
have
soon was thanks to Jerry, who
many
ran
of
this
his
to me.
things.
And I did run
Many things like featuring Lance from that time.
on this Thunderbolt dock with 18.4, so that you could pretty much.
But I don't look
connected
up
to
to him
our
so much
content.
anymore.
Now, Jerry, I do want to thank you so
An
much.
era in cycling.
And if you considered visiting him,
And honestly, would have kept most of his wins, or all his wins, I guess, if he hadn't come back.
All the ports. I kicked the tires on all
Oh, well.
of them. And I will say that I have adapted my workflow to not really needing USB Type A ports, but I have plenty of peripherals that can take advantage of these 4 3.2 Gen 2 ports that can also provide 7.5 watts of charging. And speaking of charging, we do have a substantial power brick so that we can get up to 98 watts of power to charge your device. And a couple of things to consider is that even though the MacBook Pro may have a higher ability to charge or at a higher wattage, this will just occur at a slower rate depending on the machine. And for those that have asked about whether this will damage a desktop, speaking of the Mini as an example, simply put, it will not draw from that power source when you plug it in into the host Thunderbolt 4 port. And speaking of Thunderbolt 4 ports, we do have 2 additional options here for our peripherals. And I know some of you might want some additional I/O at 40 gigabits per second, but let's understand that there's so much I/O on this board, including 3 USB-C ports with the 1 here on the back, and there is 2 on the front at 10 gigabits per second. Also on the back, we do have the audio in and we have the headphone.
Well, thanks for joining me. We're going to call it. I'm going to go watch the Van Drenthe women's race and the men's race. Have a good day.